Hello, it's very good to have you with us at this hour. I'm Daniel Choy for Arirang News. The leaders of South Korea, China, and Japan held their first trilateral summit in more than 3 years in Seoul on Sunday. Their agreements range from boosting economic cooperation to dealing with North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
With one voice, the leaders of South Korea, China, and Japan sent out a strong message to North Korea.
북한의 비핵화 목표를 확고히 견지해야 한다는 점을 재확인하고 의미 있는 육자 회담의 조속한 재개를 위해 함께 노력해 나가기로 하였습니다.
That was one of the key agreements reached at Sunday's Trilateral Summit held in Seoul. Other areas of cooperation outlined in the joint statement that emerged from the summit include speeding up negotiations on their trilateral free trade agreement, as well as increasing civilian exchanges. The three countries also agreed on more cooperation in the environmental arena by preventing pollution and yellow dust. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe acknowledged President Park Geun-hye's efforts to revive their trilateral cooperation.
It is a breakthrough for the region and the three countries, Japan, South Korea, and China, that we hold this trilateral summit for the first time in 3.5 years through the initiative of President Park.
While the three countries agreed to restore the annual summit, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said sharing a correct sense of history is key to mutual trust. Japan's attempts to distort history, including its wartime sexual enslavement of women, had put off the trilateral meeting for the last 3 years.
We agreed to properly handle sensitive matters, including that of history, by squarely facing history while advancing toward the future. We also agreed to develop stable trilateral relations and bilateral relationships in all aspects.
The next trilateral summit will take place in Japan next year. On Monday, President Park and Prime Minister Abe will try to untangle their differences in what will be their first summit since taking office. But whether it will lead to any substantial progress in their bilateral relations still remains to be seen. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Staying on the three-way meeting, the three leaders also attended a trilateral business summit where President Park once again stressed the need to maximize the economic potential of the Northeast Asian region.
삼국 간 경제 협력의 잠재력은 무궁무진하다고 생각합니다. 오늘 소중한 만남을 계기로 삼국 정상과 경제인들이 손을 잡고 동북아를 중심으로 하는 새로운 경제 질서를 만들어 나가기를 바랍니다.
Citing multilateral trade pacts like the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership or RCEP and Trans-Pacific Partnership or TPP as examples of the growing trend toward regional FTAs, the three countries agreed to speed up their trilateral trade pact and work together to foster future growth engines. Over 400 business leaders from the three countries attended the event, which also connected job seekers to potential employers and hooked up various companies with buyers through one-on-one consultations. And now we take a look at reactions from the foreign media, which showed an interest in how relations between Korea, China, and Japan will unfold after the summit. In particular, many media outlets emphasized the significance of the three countries having revived their relationship, with the Associated Press saying the three countries had agreed to reinforce a relationship that had been deteriorating due to historical and territorial issues. Japan's Kyodo News had a similar take on the meeting. China's Xinhua news agency highlighted plans for the summit to become a regular event. Economic cooperation was another focus, with Bloomberg detailing the country's efforts to conclude a trilateral free trade agreement and Reuters reporting on the country's cooperation on the mega 16-nation regional comprehensive economic partnership deal. U.S. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter arrived in Seoul on Sunday ahead of a defense ministers' meeting. Upon landing, Carter paid a visit to the demilitarized zone where he called on North Korea to end its nuclear program. He also urged the regime to rejoin the six-party denuclearization talks involving the U.S., South Korea, China, Japan, and Russia.
We remain committed to achieving that negotiated outcome with North Korea and believe that they should be on the path to doing less and ultimately zero in the nuclear field.
Carter is scheduled to meet with his South Korean counterpart Han Min-gu on Monday. The two will discuss an array of security issues, including enhanced bilateral defense cooperation and the transfer of wartime operational control of all forces in South Korea from Washington to Seoul. And moving on to the economy, Korea's exports posted their biggest decline in 6 years last month, shattering hopes that the country would reach its annual trade target of $1 trillion. Hwang Sung-hee has more details.
It's the 10th straight monthly decline and the worst so far this year. Korea's trade ministry said Sunday what used to be the country's main growth engine, exports, came to $43.5 billion in October, plunging by 15.8% from the same month a year ago. That's the biggest fall in 6 years since an almost 21% on-year plunge in August 2009, right after the global financial crisis. Meanwhile, the country's trade surplus continued a 45-month streak, with imports falling even more than exports, with imports posting a 16.6% on-year decline last month. What's notable, though, is that the gap between the growth in exports and imports has narrowed. There was negative growth in almost all sectors except for mobile communication devices exports, which soared by 42%. Especially affected by continuing low global oil prices were petroleum and petrochemical product shipments, which fell more than 41% and 21% from the previous year. Cars, ships, and steel weren't spared either.
Given that the economic conditions outside of the country are bad, it will be difficult to bring about any effect from measures to revitalize Korea's exports in the fourth quarter of the year, which is expected to continue the trend of negative growth.
That's why most experts see it as almost impossible for the country to reach its annual trade target of $1 trillion, a mark Korea had hit for 4 years running. According to an official at the Trade Ministry, the forecast for November looks a little better than October, with improvements in the shipbuilding sector due to an uptick in orders. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Despite the rosy predictions for Korea's shipbuilding industry at the end of the year, the country's shipbuilders may have to let go of up to 10,000 employees within the next 2 to 3 years due to planned restructuring set to begin this month. Industry Watcher said Sunday the restructuring will be undertaken by Korea's 3 biggest shipbuilders, Hyundai Heavy Industries, Samsung Heavy Industries, and Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering. Other small companies are also set to be a part of it. This comes as orders for ships have been on the decline, raising concerns that some businesses are also at risk for bankruptcy. Moving on to domestic politics, the floor leaders of the ruling and opposition parties have agreed to hold a so-called 2+2 meeting this week to try to resolve major points of contention between them. The decision was reached at a meeting on Sunday between the Saenuri Party's Won Yu-cheol and New Politics Alliance for Democracy's Lee Jong-geol. The gathering set for Wednesday will involve the floor leaders and deputy floor leaders of both parties. The topics on the agenda include Korea's free trade deals with China, New Zealand, and Vietnam, the 2016 budget, and the government's controversial decision to issue a single state-authorized history textbook. And in international news, a Russian airliner crashed into a mountainous area of the Sinai Desert early on Saturday morning, killing everyone on board. An Egyptian branch of the Islamic State says it's responsible, but many doubt the claim. Oh Soo-young has the details.
A Russian passenger plane crashed in Egypt's Sinai Desert, killing all 224 people on board. The plane went down on Saturday around 6:13 a.m. local time, just 23 minutes after it departed the resort of Sharm el-Sheikh for St. Petersburg. All of the passengers were Russian nationals returning from vacation, save 4 who are Ukrainian, but Russian officials have said at least 1 was from Belarus. A militant group linked to the Islamic State in Egypt has claimed responsibility for the tragedy, saying in a statement it was done in response to Russian airstrikes that killed hundreds of Muslims on Syrian land. However, local officials and international security experts questioned the validity of the claim. Egypt says that there are no signs of terrorism near the crash site, and a technical fault likely caused the plane to crash. Egypt's civil aviation minister said that communications between the plane and air traffic control had been normal before the plane suddenly disappeared from radar. Also, many doubt that militants in the area have the capacity to bring down the plane, as it is believed the missiles they possess are only capable of hitting aircraft flying at low altitudes. To identify the cause of the crash, Egyptian authorities will examine the aircraft's 2 black boxes, both of which were recovered.
Up until this point, there are no indications that anything out of the ordinary happened on this aircraft. All we can say is that it happened due to technical difficulties, and the team of experts are the ones who will be able to prove or deny this.
A team of Russian specialists will also participate in the investigation. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Turning to a different story now, Hanshik or Korean cuisine was a hit at the Milan Expo 2015, where visitors were invited to sample popular dishes like bibimbap, galbijjim, japchae, and kimchi. According to Korea's Culture Ministry on Sunday, the Korea Pavilion attracted an average of 12,000 people a day, or roughly 2.3 million people, 1/10 of the total visitors to that event. The booth was composed of a Korean restaurant and food exhibitions and was the 9th largest among the 45 national pavilions at the Expo. It was set up under the banner Hanshik, Food for the Future, You Are What You Eat. The Expo, considered one of the world's 3 biggest events, with the Olympics and the World Cup, began May 1st under the theme Feeding the Planet, Energy for Life, and came to a close on Saturday. And now for a quick look at the weather before we go. It felt like we skipped fall and went straight to winter here in Korea over the weekend. Monday morning will start with similar conditions, but the mercury would gradually rise as the day progresses. Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju will all start at between 6 and 7 degrees Celsius, but will get up to 15 by the evening. That's Korea for you. Let's check out the weather conditions outside of the country, around the world. And we've come to the end of our newscast. As always, thank you for watching. Here's wishing you a smooth transition to your Monday.